and welcome back to another episode of Limitless Speaks. My name is Lydia, and today I'm joined by
Tofumi
and Precious.
Right, so in these coming weeks, we're going to be talking a little bit about the different names of God, and another name that we've picked is Ebenezer.
My stone of help.
So, right, just to kind of get into the conversation before we just go into the name, do you guys know any songs with Ebenezer in it? Precious has already jumped the gun, but what's the song called?
Oh, isn't it Ebenezer by Pastor Nat?
Yeah.
Do you know any others?
Yeah. Ebenezer.
Somebody's looking at me like I've got no more. Do you have any other songs potentially that you know that have Ebenezer in it?
There's one called Ebenezeri,
Oh,
but I don't know
Nice.
who it's by.
what does it go like?
I'm not going to sing it.
Are you sure you don't want to hum? Give us a little taste. No? Okay, let's move on from that. Right, so what does Ebenezer mean? Like, actually, practically, what is the meaning of Ebenezer? Where does it come from? Does anyone know the story?
Ebenezer means stone of help. I think the first place, or one of the first place, actually, funny enough, it was seen somewhere else before Samuel raised a stone and called it, my stone of help. But it's the story of, Samuel, when God had kind of delivered him from something, and then he raised a memorial and named it my stone of help.
Exactly. So the verse that comes from is in 1 Samuel 7, verse 12. And as I just tippity tap my phone whilst I get that up, that's 1 Samuel 7, verse 12, which says, Then Samuel took a stone and set it in between Mizpah and Shen and called it the name of Ebenezer, saying, Hitherto hath the Lord helped us. Before I go kind of into the topic further again, have you guys got any songs where God talks about being a helper? That might be a little bit easier. Help.
My helper, my helper.
Right?
Original banger. My help comes from the Lord.
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah.
love that song.
Anyways,
This is just a game for you two. I'm just
is
here.
it?
This is for my fun.
help me find my way.
Bring me back to you. That's a nice one. Lovely. Right. So, right. Ebenezer means the stone of help, and it's basically just showing God as a helper. And I think that in that, it's really talking about where God helps that no man else can help. Wow. English, right? But Psalm 60 verse 11 says, give us help from trouble, for vain is the help of man. And I feel like Ebenezer really encompasses the fact of God as a helper that no other person can be. So do you guys know examples in the Bible where God showed up as a help where had anybody else stepped in, they couldn't have done this?
Yeah.
It had to just be God.
Yeah, I think with the Israelites, you see God as the helper a lot. Even just taking crossing the Red Sea, for example.
Yeah.
There was no way, who's gonna split the sea in half? Only God can do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's an example of God being a helper where no man can help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I've definitely looked into that. I was literally reading that passage recently where they were just praising God after they had gone past the Red Sea, because if you really think about the way God helped them, he freed them from captivity.
Yeah.
That's all they would have thought of is I just need to be freed from we're captive and da-da-da. I mean, da-da-da. But to the point where even those that held them captive couldn't hold them captive again. He made it so intentional that you will get to the Red Sea, you're going to have to go through the sea, even if you don't understand how that's going to work, so that I can make your enemies to not be able to get you again. So that's the type of help that only God can provide, parting the Red Sea, freeing them from captivity, and also crushing their enemies in the process. What's bass, isn't it? Anyways, Precious.
No, yeah, I just wanted to bring it back into the help of man is vain. I think when you think about the word stone, we normally think about a strong thing, something that it's not easily broken. And there's stones, that have been there for centuries and centuries and so on. I think that does really describe God. It's one of those ones that he is able. Man will fail, not because man has the intention to fail, but man is subject to season and time. But God, he owns season and time. So I think there are many different examples in terms of God being kind of the stone of help of someone. I think when you look at David, for example, all the battles he went to, like he never was defeated once, and he made us aware that his source of victory was God all the time. Because when you look at David, he always asked God the question, how do I go about this? How do I, he's fought many battles, but every single battle he asked God for it, and that was his source of help as well.
Yeah. Sorry. Also, another example I just remembered was in Paul and Silas, right? Really to kind of be freed.
Yeah.
Only God could have helped them.
Exactly. Like, how do you even explain that? Like, people are worshiping somewhere and suddenly the bars just break. Like, what's going on here? Like, that's the type of thing only God can step in and do. Do you guys have any other examples at all? I did have a verse I was going to raise as well there. I think when we think about God being a helper in terms of like the type of help that no other man can help as well, we also need to see that in the light of the help that we can't give ourselves.
Right.
So there's a verse that I was pondering on, and God kind of revealed it to me in a different way. It's Mark 10 verse 27. And it says, and Jesus looking upon them said, with men it is impossible, but not with God. For with God all things are possible. And I think sometimes we look at that verse and we think with other people and like with other people, like it's impossible, but with God. But sometimes we have to put ourselves in that verse and be like, even with myself, if I do things in my own strength, it's impossible. So when we want to think about God as a helper that no other person can be, that even goes so deep into the capacity of like where I can't even help myself, because you think like things like exams and things, I can study for that so I can do well, or I can get a job, and I mean by God's grace I can get a job and like work, earn my money, and I'm fine, and these types of things. But that's where Ebenezer has to get to that point where it's like, I can no longer help myself. Nobody else can help me. God has to step in here. And that's where you can really acknowledge God to be Ebenezer. Do you guys have any more examples in the Bible before we look inward?
I think if there's one thing I would say, I feel like every story in the Bible just shows how much God will help. Because even like the Israelites, I think that's an example you brought in. There were different stages of their life that God just helped them, even when they didn't deserve it, even when they raised other statues, other gods to come and do it. At the end of the day, those gods failed them. And then it was then God who came in once again to rescue them from, what they had gone through. I think also like Samuel, obviously, I think we touched upon, that's the main example. He's also an example of that. Gideon as well. Gideon was literally the least in his family. And then one thing that strikes me about that story is that, God told him, he said like, you have too many soldiers with you, reduce it. I want to show you that it's not by the manpower. I want to show you that it's not by the armies you're carrying. So with 300 people, let's take an entire, and like the Bible described the other people as many as a country or something like that. But like, God was so like, it was intentional about telling him, drop all the soldiers so that when you guys win, you don't say it's because we were strong, it's because we practiced. You would know that this can only be God, that there's no way we would have come out of that if God hadn't saved us or helped us.
Exactly.
And I don't know if you mentioned this already. I think you might have, but David and Goliath. Like, who is going to fight Goliath with the stone?
Literally my stone of help right there.
So that's like an example of God really being the only person that can help in that situation as well.
That's literally it. I was also going to talk about Jesus as well, like when he came onto earth and he acted as a helper that nobody else could be. I was watching The Chosen. Forgive me, Lord.
I loved it. You've been roped in. Welcome to the party.
Yeah, I've been taken. I was the number one advocate for not watching The Chosen. Not because I don't love the Lord, but I just...
Yeah,
I don't like to be
I got roped in too. It's okay.
So, but yeah, they caught me anyway. So I was recently watching it and I got to the story of Peter and I didn't really think about it that deep about like, oh yeah, he got fish. Do you know what I mean?
He got fish.
But I was like, obviously the times are different and the circumstance, like fish is important to them and they're valuable. But I didn't think about it practically. And it was just that case where it's like, Jesus just stood on his boat and like was preaching. Don't know how biblically accurate that is, but I'm talking about The Chosen here. So if you guys want to come for anybody, it's The Chosen. But like he was on the brink of his debt there and he had a debt to pay.
Yeah.
And it's like until Jesus came and like provided that, like he had one more night. Not biblically, I say again, but he had one more night and it was like what am I going to do? It's the morning has come. They're about to collect this money from me. I don't have it. Jesus literally steps in. All of a sudden, his entire debt for months and months and months paid. How does that happen? Where did the fish come from?
I'm telling you.
Even the taxes. Pastor was talking about this today, about how they needed to pay tax. And Jesus is like, okay, go catch a fish.
A fish
open
mouth.
its mouth, and then take a coin out and pay our taxes. How does that happen? I feel like even now we're in the times where God kind of shows up in miraculous ways that are just so abnormal. But we'll go smoothly into, if you're comfortable, sharing any times that God has stepped in as Ebenezer yourself. It doesn't even have to be a personal example, but any times you've seen God, real life, be like, this is just God. Like, this is just Ebenezer right here.
Yeah. I think I'm going to take it personal, just because, I mean, it's everything is testimony, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's my testimony or my mother's testimony, but anyway, I was part of it. I think for me, when I look back at like my background, where I'm coming from, let's say life in general, it's just one of those ones that if that catches me in a place of prayer, it's tears. Because basically my parents said when I was born, I was like intubated or something like that. I couldn't breathe. And my grandma, I mean, this is my grandmother. You know how Africans are, they like to exaggerate. She was like, you were dead for like 5 minutes. I said, okay, I don't know how true that is, but I'd take it. Fun fact. And yeah, apparently I wasn't breathing or, anything else like that. And funny enough, prior to, me being born, my mom didn't know she was like pregnant with me. And I don't know, she was in a particular situation and she had taken something, like drank something, and that thing could have led to like a miscarriage and everything, right? And it didn't. And then I was born, and then I had so many complications. Apparently I was unconscious. Again, this is my grandmother's side of the story now. She said I was unconscious one time. They had to burn the bottom of my feet so that I would be conscious. I said, hello, that's child abuse. But
You know
it's okay.
what I mean?
It's okay, I'm alive now.
African folktales.
I'm telling you. And then so many things happened at once. And even my mom, I think she won't mind me sharing this. She said, like, when I was born as well, and she was like, going from one place to the other. This is when I was sick. She had a bike accident. Basically, she had fallen off the bike, and the driver, he didn't know for like a long time. Everybody was screaming at him, and like obviously my mom was just getting like pulled on the floor. And she said that in that moment she had seen her uncle, and the uncle was like, "You can't go yet. You have a child."
Yeah.
And that's the only thing she remembers. And then next thing, she's in the hospital. I'm like, mom and child is in the hospital. But I think there have been many different events in life, like after that, where you think, what is man that you're so mindful of him? Like, what do I do, God? Like, I don't even do anything. Even before now that I'm intentional with service, I was living a very wayward life. I wasn't, glorifying God with everything I had or everything I was doing. But yet, it says even before you were formed, like, I knew you. So I think the fact that I'm sitting here, the devil's tried like a lot of times, but he has been my great source of help. And even sometimes you like, be feeling really down. You're feeling like, do you know what, God? Let's go. No, never say it. But yeah, he just comes around and turns it and makes it work for your good. So yeah, he's really that source. I think Stone of Help also just reminds me of like the source of everything.
Yeah.
Because like we've all kind of said here, the things God did in the Bible, not man could even do it, like, or even think of doing it. Because if you can't keep yourself alive, right? Yeah. How much can you really do to affect anything else? It's impossible. So
that's it. Yeah. And the reason I asked for personal stories, we'll get to soon. So I hope yours is cooking. I'm looking at you. She knows. But like, is because we can't really actually understand God unless we see him be these things for us in our lives. I remember Ebenezer is such an interesting one for me, because before I only knew God as Jireh. I said, God, I need again. Like, do you know what I mean? Provide for me here, provide for me there. But like, when God actually shows these different faces of himself to you, such as Ebenezer, it really shows you how multifaceted God is, and he really becomes real to you. So it's like, it is important to hear these personal stories, even for the people listening, to know like this is practically how God shows up for people in their lives. So for me.
Okay, and before I like say a personal story, I think also even just thinking of something so little as waking up, like
It ain't
you
literal.
can't do that yourself at all.
Yeah.
Like setting an alarm, it's not the alarm that's going to wake you up. The
Yeah.
alarm could ring and you could not wake up, you know. So just remembering, like, it's God that wakes me up every single morning.
Yeah.
But for me, I think I've seen God as like Ebenezer, like my stone of help, just throughout my whole like academic life thing. I really cannot do it without him. Like, you know, people say you can study, which you could obviously, we study, we put in our best and everything, but really and truly, like, I could get to the exam hall and forget everything I learned, or like not even make it, like be ill that day or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's really just God. And I've just seen him like throughout the whole, like my whole time in school and everything. He's really just shown up for me at every single point, even at points where I thought like, oh, he didn't show up.
Yeah.
Like looking back, he really did help me through it all. But yeah.
Yeah. And I guess for myself, if I had to say like how God showed up for Ebenezer for me, there was literally a time I got a job and literally months and months gone by. They're not letting me start this job. I remember sharing this story in Limitless once when they said testimony time, you know, I responded. But yeah, so I got this job. They weren't starting me with the job. And something in me was like, there's no way they're not going to, like, I was like, I've got the job, so it's going to start, you know what I mean? And even getting the job itself, I was not qualified. So you know the way God just gets you things. So they literally just sent me an email one time, like, and I'm there praying for a job I already have received to God, Lord, let me start this job. You know, when you have to get to that point where you're like, God, I've got the job, but they're not starting it for God knows why. And somebody emails me literally just to be like, we're not going to start you. And I'm literally just like, but how do you do that? I signed a contract. Like, this is not okay. But God literally stepped in the situation. It's a very long story. I don't know. But you guys with the details. Come to church, you would have heard the testimony, you know? But it was one of these ones where it's like, it got to the point where I was getting offers from other jobs in the same field. But God had got me that job. And I was like, God, this is the job you got me. So it's like, you know, make them act right. So God really turned it around, and it came to be that, you know, today I'm employed there.
I'm screaming.
You know, and I'm complaining every day about it, but I'm still here, you know. We thank God for Ebenezer. But yeah, so are there any last points you guys want to touch on with God being a helper?
I want to give a Bible verse that I love so much, and it's Psalms 121 verses 1 and so on. It says, I will lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord who made the heaven and earth. He will not allow your foot to be moved. He who keeps you will not slumber. Behold, he who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. And it's just a reminder that, you know, our help really just comes from the Lord. It's not from us. It's not from people around us, whatever. It really is from God. And so if we're ever in a situation where we need help, like, we should ensure that God is the first source we look up to, you know? Yeah.
No, I love that. I think that's a good way to kind of put it in like scripture. Another thing I would say is stop or pause and reflect. I feel like when you catch yourself asking for too many things, asking God and you're not getting any answers, pause, look back at your life. What has God done for you before? Use that, thank him, and use that to build up your faith. Use it to build up your trust. Use that as, you know, as something to push you back to believe in. Because I think in that moment where you're asking for so many things, expecting, hoping, your faith can really be tested. But when you pause and use your own testimony as a way to, you know, encourage yourself, motivate yourself to once again trust in God. Yeah. Because honestly, man will fail. Yeah. Anytime. Like I said, not because they want to fail, sometimes because they want to fail. Yeah. But God, like she said, like he will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He won't put you through a position just for him to be like, lol. No, it's never going to happen. Like everything he has you go through, it's for something. So always just think back and trust that he will come through. Like, you know, it says, you know, though it may tarry, it will not tarry. It will surely come at the appointed time. So.
Exactly. And just in closing, I'm going to leave you guys with this verse. It is Psalm 46 verse 1, and it says, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in time of trouble. And when you're in the time of trouble, you may not believe it, but God will show up. He's written it there. He can be a very present help, and that is when he will show up for you as Ebenezer. So we hope you guys have enjoyed this podcast today, and we hope you'll enjoy the other dimensions of God and the other names that we're going to discuss further. Follow us on our social media. And as always, God bless you. Have an amazing rest of your week. See you guys next week.
Adios. Bye.